Good to go.
All right. Well, wonderful. I think, guys, if it's all right with you, I see Ty Cashin is just dialing in, so that's a good sign. But I guess without further ado, why don't I get things moving here? This is a meeting of our Village of Sherwood Hills Recreation Committee meeting. Today is Monday, September 8th in the year 2025, and the time is now 7:03, and I call this meeting to order. Joining us here today, I guess I'm just going to jump down to roll call. Joining us today are members in no particular order. We got Andy Curtis, we have Kat Hurley, Cynthia Brand, Ty Cashin, myself, Dietmar as chairperson, and then also um, our esteemed David Sykes. David Sykes, I did not hear from Joel Fields. Maybe he's joining later, but if he isn't, I guess he's absent, not excused at this point in time.
Hey, Dietmar, I just got a text from Joel. He said, it says someone needs to let me in.
Hmm, got
I
it.
think
If
he
he,
I think he's the one that's trying to join the Teams meeting rather than the Zoom meeting. I sent a couple messages to that um,
Okay,
pseudo
let
meeting
me
and
let me let me
nothing.
tell him that.
yeah,
That'd be good.
great. So I guess he will be joining us. How about that? We'll keep things going that way. All right, so David, that gets us past call to order roll call. I guess at this point in time, I get to ask you, David Sykes, are we in compliance with the open meeting law, and has this meeting been properly posted?
Yes, it has.
Great, thank you so much. We're on agenda item 4, which would be the approval of minutes. Here's Joel Fields. We'll wait for him to just make an appearance here, and then we'll move on with item 4. Ty Cashin, thank you for doing that. Joel Fields, thank you for joining us. As you guys are catching up, we've already gone through the call of order, roll call, compliance of open meeting laws, and now we're on the approval of our minutes from July 7th. So as I mentioned last time, um, really want to make sure that we update the process of how we approve minutes because there seems to be some maybe not confusion, but inconsistencies in terms of process. So we have adopted as a village, or we're abiding by Robert's Rules of Order, and Robert's Rules of Order are pretty clear in how to review and approve minutes. If you look at Robert's Rules of Order 41-10 and 41-11, it lays it out there. So the meeting minutes were all part of your packet. You have had the ability to read them. So I guess at this point in time, I would ask, are there any changes that anyone would propose to the meeting minutes? And I'll give you a moment to respond to that. Seeing none, I'll ask a second time, are there any changes that anyone wishes to make to the meeting minutes? Seeing none, David Sykes, the meeting minutes are approved as presented. All right. We're on to item 5, public comments. Now, this being a digital meeting, I don't see anyone else in the digital waiting room, or I guess I wouldn't even see them in the waiting room. Let me cut to the chase. David Sykes, is there a member of the public that's here that I don't see that wishes to speak?
Nope, there is no waiting room, and everyone's here.
All right, good deal. So no members of the public that wish to speak. So that gets us to uh, our agenda of current state and status updates. So I think without too much introduction, Joel Fields and anyone else that wants to talk about it, let's do a bit of a debrief of this year's Haydn House summer events.
Sounds good. I'll get started and anyone else can jump in with thoughts or comments. And again, sorry for being late. I was on the Teams link for some reason. Um, so the summer concerts this summer, I would say in looking back at them, we had another successful season. The reason I say that is the feedback I got was, I'd say, overwhelmingly positive. I do get random comments during the shows and after, and texts later on, or people I see through the neighborhood. And it seems to me, at least my read of it, is that people still appreciate these events. They like having this as something to do in the evening. Um, This year in particular, I heard a number of comments about the diversity of the musical acts. We had a brass band one time, so it's a little bit different. And when I start talking about next year, you'll see that sort of how I think we can set up next year in that way as well. Um, and then also, I would say the attendance people stick around through the end of the shows generally. It seems like the attendance stays strong. And also, it didn't die down towards the end of the summer. If you remember a few years ago when we did this, we had a lot more of these events. Towards the end of the summer, I don't know if people were busy or exhausted from these or whatever, but the attendance started dropping. And both last year and this year, I didn't see that as much. So for those reasons, I think it's a success. The changes in dates that we made this year, both the rain dates and originally scheduled dates, seem to be working. We don't have as many conflicts with the food trucks having to go to other events. I know we ran into one or two of those this year, but we still had enough to serve food to everyone. So again, overall, it seems like we're pointing in the right direction, and the changes we've been making incrementally over the last couple of years seem to be working. So I appreciate everyone's feedback and input on those. Again, I think we're heading in the right direction. Looking ahead to next year, I would say my my opinion is that we should stick with a similar schedule. Again, it's working for the reasons I mentioned before. And then I'm going to put some extra effort into making sure we can continue to bring diversity to the musical acts that come. So different types of music that are coming in. And so again, based on that feedback from a number of people this year. So that's what I plan on doing next year, unless I hear something more strong feedback from any of you or other residents in the neighborhood. But I'd be happy to hear if anyone else has any perspectives or opinions on it.
Yeah, why don't we just go around the room here? Does anybody wish to add to that or offer a different viewpoint or any other constructive feedback? Yeah, Cynthia, please.
Yeah, I thought they went really well. I wasn't able to make it to the rain date, but the ones I went to, I thought were well attended. People seemed to be really socializing and enjoying it. And it seemed like a fair amount of people used the food carts as well. The one thing I think we should be aware of next year is making sure to communicate with Four Corners during the scheduling process, not Four Corners, excuse me, Land because they do a night program. And it just so happens this time that our rain date overlapped with their night program date. And just we hadn't coordinated together to realize that that had happened until pretty much it was happening. So just to be cognizant of that next year. And I'm happy to be the one to provide those dates over to Landrec, just so that we're all aware. I guess I hadn't realized that there wasn't sort of a master calendar for the Haydn House at the Village Hall, which would also be helpful. Um, but barring that, if we just keep our communication open between Landrec and us so that we're aware of any kind of conflict like that further in advance.
Good deal. Thank you.
I'll
All
add
right,
that to
go
the
ahead.
to-do list for next year. I keep a list of things like sort of timeline. I'll put that in the list for next year. It's a good idea.
Mhm.
Any other feedback from members on the committee? Bunch of shaking of heads. Okay, well, I'll just add my two comments at the risk of repeating anything that was said. It feels like it's getting a bit easier year after year, and that the things that we've tried and tinkered with, slight improvements and some trial and error type execution of the plan, it seems to just get easier a little bit. I really enjoyed the yard signs that they were very purposeful for this year and so specific, so that it wasn't this guessing game of, okay, when are the events? It was just listed out there, and that folks could really pay attention to um, when are these events happening and get it scheduled. Food trucks on my end were okay. I think we have a good crew, a good cast of characters that are reliable and consistent. And as I shared before, with this group. Perhaps one could argue that it's not as the choices appear to be the same year after year, and maybe not as diverse. But I remember in the first few years, the struggle really was getting folks to commit and getting them to commit to the event, and then not only to the event the day of, but any rain dates. So that reliability is almost key. We'll see what we do next year, and I'd like to actually get someone else from the committee involved with getting that organized. It really has gotten a lot easier over the years with the paperwork that needs to get filled out, et cetera. But I'm going to be looking to get that baton passed on to someone else. So that's it from my end. I think we've gone around the room already, unless somebody else wants to add anything to it. Joel, great job getting it organized. I'm guessing on the financial side of things that things were okay as well with the grant that was made by the league, that it all worked out.
Yep, that's right.
Above our
The league funded it again this year, and just like the last couple of years, at the end of the season, we were able to return a little bit of the money that they fronted us. So that was done. And one last comment, Dietmar, in relation to you saying you were going to ask for some food truck help for next year, which is totally understandable. With Peter retiring from the committee, we are going to need some help on the marketing side of things. So we'll need someone to jump into that role next year. So if anyone has any interest, we obviously have plenty of time, months and months and months from now, but start thinking about it if you'd be interested in picking up where Peter left off.
Yep. Thank you for putting that plug in. All right. Should we move on? I guess maybe before we move on, Joel, I heard you say it, that without a doubt that there is still enough desire by village residents, constituents, that this is meaningful and valuable, and that we shouldn't see a reason to stop these events. First of all, I guess the attendance is there. It appears that people enjoy it, and that's the general feedback that we get. So we'll just keep plugging along. Is that a fair assessment?
It is from my point of view, but if anyone sees it differently, please chime in. We do have to make sure we keep an eye out if something is, no longer desired by people, but it seems like it is to me.
Dietmar and everybody, the only thing I would caution, and this might not be a very popular thing to say, is right now the whole summer event series is dependent on a few people, which is great. But if people were to move, people couldn't do things. Do we have kind of any input that we could get from somebody in the village to kind of at least be part of the meetings when we start planning these events? Because my only fear is right now we're kind of dependent on us as a committee, and I don't think people in the village realize that it's the residents who are putting on these events.
So what I hear you saying is we should do more self-promotion, that
I
it's
think
folks
so.
like us that make this work.
Yeah, it's
Got
not.
it.
Yeah,
we have to create
then,
more self-interest.
Yeah, more self-interest, and I think also, yes, we all want to move forward with it, but thank goodness, Joel, you've had the time and the wherewithal to help find bands, and thank you, Dietmar, for the permits. But that is an extraordinary effort that other people may not be able to shore up. So how do we think about the future and make sure that this sort of a legacy event can continue if there wasn't two people in the committee leading it? Can the village somehow help out?
Well, I mean, I think this is a great point. I don't know who you mean by the village. It would probably be just residents, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it is. How do any legacies continue? I'm not sure that I've got the
I'm
perfect
talking
answer
about
to.
village employees, like
Oh
somebody
no,
who's employed by the village.
I don't think
I'm just
that's
throwing it out there that there is. I would be concerned that if this is all being done by residents.
Yeah, Yep.
right
Yep. And I think those are the intentions still going forward. So,
I think one other way to get just to respond to that, I think one other way to potentially deal with that concern, which I think is valid, right? What if something happened to the 2 or 3 people that put in a lot of effort on this? It would be hard to just keep it going. So another way to do that is have more people involved and have a little redundancy in the roles so that if someone did move or something happened to someone, it could continue on because others know how it works and hopefully have the same interest level. So that could be something that we put some effort into, is maybe have a little bit of redundancy in the roles or share the load a bit more, which I'd be very open to. Dietmar's already said he's going to be looking for some help. So that might be a way to kind of get at what you're talking about, Kat, in a slightly different way.
yeah, thank you, Joel. I'll go to Cynthia and then Ty, you next. You're still on mute, Cynthia.
Thank you. One of the ways that we've dealt with that for other programs is we have a handbook so that there's a guideline for people to follow. So we might consider, do we want to create a handbook for how we're putting these events together, and do that as we go this year? So like Joel, when you were talking about marketing, I'm happy to make the design for the sign again, but I don't know who we were dealing with for printing the signs. I don't know exactly how many signs were printed, things like that, that would be helpful information to have, to just do it year over year if someone new needs to step in.
Ty, you're up next.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I think Joel has some documentation for, what he does. And certainly there were a couple instances this summer where like I filled in for one of the shows and Peter was on deck to fill in for one of the shows and Joel sent us a checklist, uh, for what needed to happen in preparation for the show. And it's really, that's more kind of like day of type activities, but certainly like something similar could be developed for planning. I think we have some redundancy already, that we've trialed. So
We do. And I think we could take Ty, like some of that stuff I sent you and Peter for that we're filling in, could take that and put it in a document, put it in a shared document that everyone knows where it is. So I think there's a way to take that and capture it a little bit better. And I could probably clean up the sheet. Yes, I do have a sheet, but I'm probably the only one that would understand it. So I'd have to clean it up a little bit. But I could do that to share it.
Okay, well, good conversation. Kat, thank you for bringing it up. Ty, Cynthia, Joel, thanks for the comments. I guess we'll live to fight another day. Yeah, I mean, as a committee, we'll pick this up again and probably, I think would be January, March meeting, as we get closer, March and May, and we'll just roll. I honestly think that, as I mentioned before, just my last parting comments here, Kat, you're absolutely right. I think we need to get more folks interested and certainly buy-in the process here. But it's also not rocket science. I think the things that I've developed is truly, they are simple to the extent that here's a list of vendors that we've reached out to. Here are the things that the way I engage with them, and going forward, that even if I dropped off the face of this earth, then that folks would be able to pick up the parts and pieces to make this work. It's figure outable. So, all right, let's. Anything else on that, or should we move on? Move on. All right. McKenna Park. I still have this on here, and I have it on here for a reason. We went through the process of the McKenna Park Master Plan for the last, I guess by now, 18 months or so. And at a point in time that Administrator Brian Mooney made a grant application for the Nelson Stewardship Fund, I believe. Or I'm sorry, David Sykes, correct me if I'm wrong. The Stuart Nelson grant funding application. could be getting my terminology mixed up here. But in any event, I guess we haven't really received any updates whether that application was successful, isn't successful, has been reviewed, etc. So to that end, it's no real updates other than the master plan is done, and at this point in time, the board is not necessarily in a meaningful way engaged with next steps on what to do, just based on the grant application that's either in process or is being reviewed as we speak. So nothing else to share with you all on that front. Questions? Okay. Move on here. Cynthia, we have the standing line item of just legacy programs, and I'm wondering in the future what we want to do with that agenda item. I think you brought it up maybe over a year or so ago, and that was truly based on, I think you had some questions that I couldn't answer, and I think you and I may have had a one-off conversation to say, hey, could you check in with the success of these legacy programs? Maybe not across the board, but certain checkpoints, so on and so forth. Or what do you hear from folks? So this continues to be on there. By and large, I attribute the legacy programs to be self-sustaining and running. I know that from an administration standpoint, that over the last 3 years, changes were made in terms of hiring and the hiring process, and that in that process of hiring summer help, that it no longer has to go in front of the board, and that actually the administrator can hire, so on and so forth. But maybe this is also a good point to check in with you. What have you heard about the legacy programs? How was the summer? How was Land Rec? How was Four Corners? How was tennis? Anything you can share would always be helpful.
Yeah. I agree with you that having some of those changes made, especially in hiring, was very helpful because that caused a lot of issues to have a long delay between when jobs were offered and when they were actually able to be sort of confirmed. And we did lose staff for that. So I think that's a major improvement. I don't know that we need to have this on for every meeting. My goal was just to make sure we're checking in about once a year. And so I don't have a full report yet of programs for how the full summer went. Basketball is still in session. So I have been in contact with Ashby, and the new session is starting actually this week. It starts on the 9th. It's a small group. So if there are other elementary age kids that you know who'd be interested, there are spots available still, which is a really fun outdoor basketball program. As you might remember, years ago, we used to have an indoor program before COVID. And so when it got picked back up again, it's volunteer and young staff, similar to Four Corners and Land Rec, doing small groups of outdoor basketball. And then I will follow up with the volunteer coordinators for the other programs. The thing to watch out for is to make sure that if they're ever in a situation that they're having questions, having budget problems, or having difficulty recruiting other volunteer coordinators, I think it's really helpful for them to know that the committee is here for them, in addition to village staff.
Great. No, that's a good summary. So maybe I'll keep this on for our November meeting, and then just take it off the agenda until we get closer to the season again. And at that point in time, Cynthia, even if it's a few minutes of just updates, here are things for Four Corners, Land Rec, blah blah blah, and give everybody a good sense of what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good deal.
sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, item D, tennis courts. So I swear that at some point in time we will actually get the tennis courts resurfaced. I think this has been surfacing on the agenda for a number of sessions. So in my last conversation with Administrator Brian Mooney, that a contractor has been picked, right? There's a rebid process to all that, landed on a low responsible bid. There's still, this is about 3 weeks ago. At that time, there's still no firm confirmation as to when the resurfacing will happen other than an inclination of it happening this fall. So whether that's September, October. I think if it bleeds any further into October, then it almost bumps it into the spring of next year. So what I shared with Brian Mooney are simply my concerns, and if at all possible, to get this work done yet this fall. So him and I have not connected on what the response was with the subcontractor, with the contractor, but that he understood why we're trying to get this done this fall and not bump it into another season here of next spring. So I know that there are some folks within the village that have reached out to me, whether in person or by email, that are wondering when the pickleball courts will be available. So I think there's a keen enough interest of folks wanting to continue on new courts with tennis and also pickleball. All right. Questions on that? None? We'll move on. Let's go to line item 7A here. I want to bring this up again, and actually this would be, I believe, the second time that we bring it up. And just to refresh everybody, what we had talked about at the last meeting, and as I should almost pull back a little bit, the village operates with two sort of distinct budgets. There's the annual operation budgets, or the annual operation budget, which covers salaries and power and lights, police department, EMS to the city of Madison, so on and so forth. And then there's a second budget called the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan, and those are the two distinct buckets here. So as the name implies, capital improvement, those are events where we try to borrow money, go out and issue debt for capital improvements. So whether that's roads, whether that's facilities, or other capital improvements to the facility that we need to borrow for that's not deemed operational. So what I really would like the committee to wrestle with, and I'm trying to figure out if there's someone that is able to sort of take lead. I believe that what we're doing with the ice rink and Ty Cashin, how he's leading the charge of how to just make do with the current state of the ice rink and sort of smaller amenity adds to make it work, that we may want to work on a plan that's more holistic and perhaps has a longer view through a different lens of what we want to do with such an amenity as ice skating in the winter months in our village of Sherwood Hills. And if indeed going forward, we can consistently rely on natural ice, or if there are other improvements, recommendations that we want to work through to hopefully land in a spot of making a recommendation to the board to incorporate a plan, whatever this plan is, with future iterations of the CIP. And I think this is probably a legacy item that really, in terms of the village, having this amenity of an ice rink, that we need to think more, I don't want to say boldly, but with more assurances as to what we want to do going forward, and not maybe just rely on natural ice and all the ways to manipulate that, but to have an enduring winter season and an ice rink. So the only way to do that, the only way that I see how we can do that, is to actually develop a plan and a recommendation, whether that's an internal memo that gets shared with the board, whether that's an official memo that comes from the recreation committee to say here are the different things that we've considered, and here are the recommendations we can make, which take this amount of money or this rough order of magnitude of money, et cetera, et cetera. But I see this to be a valuable endeavor. I'm not sure if the rest of the committee agrees, so I really want to check in with folks. A, do you understand what I'm trying to ask of you? And if you do, or if I explain it again and then you do, if this is truly a worthwhile endeavor for us to undertake as a committee. So I'll leave it at that and maybe just open it up to the floor for questions or comments. And don't go all at once. I know it's hard. You're trying to hold back. Andy Curtis, please.
All right. Yeah, I'll start. I mean, I think that's if we have the opportunity to get funding, I think we should go for it. I think we can, if this is how we have to approach it, to improve the ice quality, to improve the number of days it's skatable. Yeah, I think we should investigate that.
Yeah, and you just in your second part of your statement, that's more the operative way of looking at it. If we feel it is important to request funding or have it built into the plan, the way we go about it is not through the operational side of things, it's really through the capital improvement process. And that, I mean, that's not to say that this will happen anytime soon. I mean, this could be a seed that is planted now and may not become the board's priority for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. Who knows? I mean, it just depends. But I feel like if we don't do something, we will miss an opportunity to both discuss it at this level and also miss the opportunity to actually pursue something if we so feel compelled to improve this amenity. So I think you hit it on the nail on the head there, Andy. The way to do it, the vehicle by which we should do it is through the CIP process. So anyways, I apologize. Ty, you had your hand up. Go for it, please.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and I like the way you've kind of structured the different kind of budgets and what we should maybe be aiming at moving forward. Um, and I think for the ice rink, like kind of talking about that concrete example, um, it's hard because I feel like we have to. I feel like the last couple of years we've had kind of like a new crew chief, and we've been building a lot of expertise and building that relationship. And we need to have a few years of kind of like feasibility work of trying some new things. We've been trying on like these ice like rink liners and so forth. And it's hard, I think, to go to the board, with a pitch for budget, unless we've had some, you know, kind of some evidence that we've been doing our homework and we've been trying some different things, and there's some kind of like stability and accountability in the teams that have been working on this. So but I think we're getting there. So I think you bring it up at a good time that it's maybe worth looking into. And when I kind of summarized last winter's experience, I put together some kind of short-term and long-term items, that would be desirable um, for
Yeah.
consideration. And maybe we need to look at that long-term list, to see if those are CIP items.
Yeah, exactly. And that is what you're picking up here. Thank you for picking that up. Is really the longer term view of this and how we want to make a recommendation to maybe this board, a future board that lays out the opportunities and the investment that's needed in order to keep this amenity moving forward. So I'm not thinking of just the plastic sheet, whatever, the $800 in plastic sheet, which is not a capital improvement per se, but much bigger, longer term, broader term. So, and the reason why I say that is you have to understand the process by which these budgets move through an annual operation. So, and let me just take a moment to explain that. The CIP, which is a 5-year plan. So this fall, we're going into the budget season. A 5-year CIP plan will be developed, and the CIP plan is really grounded in our debt capacity. So how to level out our debt capacity over those 5 years. And that's not always the same year after year, right? There'll be bumps at times where we take on debt, and then as that debt drops off, debt capacity frees up over time again. So not year over year is it the same amount of borrowing that's happening. As a matter of fact, it's mostly different from year to year, but there's a 5-year time horizon in all of this. So the CIP for what will be 2026 through 2031 will be processed this fall. And the items that are listed in the CIP for 2026 get managed now and assigned with the process or with processing the CIP this fall. So to that end, capital improvements that the board agrees on with recommendations through the finance committee will basically be more or less locked in, or at least be assigned for 2026. So what I'm asking is really more longer term, so that as we get into CIP planning of 2027, 2028, 2029, or as the board gets into those planning processes, that there is a document available to say, hey, the Recreation Committee has thought about this amenity in this way, and in this internal memo or in this recommendation, here are the good, better, best options to incorporate with any future CIPs. I think it's unrealistic to think that we will be earmarked for anything, or that we can make a request for earmarking anything in the 2026 CIP, that it is much more longer term, as in 2027, 2028, or the years thereafter. So just to provide perspective on the time horizon here. Make sense? Okay. Thoughts, comments on what we're talking about? Is it fair to say that the committee agrees that this is a worthwhile endeavor? Is it an amenity that we want to keep as is in stasis? Well, I shouldn't say that in stasis, because it's always being improved, right? Ty, you're doing a good job. But do we want to have a more global view of how we treat this amenity as we move on in years, and as global warming just simply has an effect on our ice time year over year? I guess that's the question to the committee. And if yes, how do we engage in that process?
Yeah, I mean, speaking specifically about the ice rink, I'd laid out a couple, like if we were to spend, some money and really want to invest, things come up like the, artificial ice, actively cooled rinks, those sorts of things that, a couple residents have approached me about both of those concepts. I'm not thrilled with either of those, to be honest, in terms of just kind of like quality of the ice of the former, and the kind of complexity of maintenance of the latter. And so, um, I honestly, I feel like there's a lot of kind of like midterm improvements that I don't know if they really fall into kind of like operating expenses or CIP, like regrading the Heidenhaus field, that I think actually it would have a big impact, but I don't know kind of where those fall. And maybe that's what the discussion is about, is kind of like going through the list of potential improvements and kind of like categorizing them and putting them in different buckets, and prioritizing them.
That's it. Yep, that's it. Yep, I think you're right. It is exactly that type of conversation to have. And I'm not an expert at what even the options are, but you're laying it out there almost. A much lighter lift is to understand what it would take to regrade that entire area now that it's been in use for the last time it was regraded, I have no idea. And then you move up in the options of more certainty. But I think it needs the conversation, and it needs the well thought out document for any future board to consider any of these options, because they have to be laid out. It can't just be ad hoc of, hey, we want to do this, because I don't think that that's meaningful. I think the conversation needs to happen, and then whether it's a memo report needs to be issued. Again, if the committee believes that this is an important endeavor for us to engage with. I know, Ty, we have your vote.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's a long-term thing, and if this is our way to get funding, so we're not in November, we're not saying, hey, we need, money for this or that. I think it's a good idea to have this figured out and listed out.
Yeah, I think it helps with our kind of like kind of the just having kind of clear directions to the village crew too. I think, that's the other piece of it is having a plan and kind of saying that this is like the expectation and division of labor between crew assignments and volunteer assignments and that sort of thing. And because I feel like, you know, a lot of that conversations about kind of what we need on an annual basis are like conversations between Terry and I, like kind of figuring it out every year. And there's not really necessarily any like kind of documented plan about what we expect to do in 2026 and 2027 and moving forward. So I think putting together for this particular project, I know you're kind of speaking in general about all recreation projects, but the ice rink specifically, I think it would be good to have kind of a guidance document.
All right.
Just to chime in quick, it makes
Please.
sense to me as well. Ty's put together a lot of the ideas out there. It seems like this would be formalizing that and putting it out there in more of a format that the village could react to. That's the way I'm taking it. So it seems like a good move.
Yeah. Well, Ty, if you're so inclined, I'm going to keep this on the agenda for our next meeting. And I think maybe we should have an offline conversation of how do we want to process through this and what the ultimate outcome of this is, so that for the next meeting we're a bit more informed and more structured in our approach.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I feel like we need to have like almost like a working meeting or something to generate the ideas, categorize them,
Mm-hmm.
put together the skeleton of a
Yep.
a document that I'd be happy to kind of clean up and write.
Okay, good deal. Cynthia or Kat, any other thoughts or comments?
I mean, I think it would be awesome if we can put together what would be the downside. Not much, putting together a budget for longer term. I defer. I am so not a ice rink expert. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
Well, I think water is involved at times, and maybe cold weather. Yep. All right. Well, that's good feedback. Thank you, Kat.
Oh,
Cynthia?
yeah. I think people love the ice skating rink. I really think it's a special part of the village, and there's generally good support for it. And this is a legitimate problem that we're coming to, is how are we going to be able to sustain this? And of course, the question on everybody's mind is, what does it cost? So as we explore options that we propose to the board, it would be really helpful, at least to me when looking at it, to have an idea of how much would this option cost and what would the benefit be? So if we are kind of looking at it like, this is how many days of good ice we are expecting on average going forward, the way it is now. And then if we paid for one of these upgrades, Ty, like you mentioned, a couple of the different options, sort of self-cooling or artificial ice, how much improvement are we going to get to that number? And so essentially, how much does it cost us to get 10 more days a year of good ice? 30 days a year, what does that work out to? And I think that's the kind of thing that would help the board make a decision as to whether they wanted to add it to the budget or not.
Okay. I think we have consensus, and I think we're in alignment as to what we want to try to get accomplished. So that's a good thing. And I also believe I heard everyone say that this is an amenity that we want to keep, and more importantly, an amenity to keep that assures its use. We want to have assured use. How that looks like, I guess that's what we're going to go through the different permutations of scope and recommend or thoughts on scope and numbers and so on and so forth. Fair? All right. Excellent. I'll move on to 7B here. Now, the reason why I put the pool building modernization study and recommendations on here, not for the reasons that the pool is under the Recreation Committee's purview, not at all, but to make everybody aware as to what is also going on, and that this different amenity in the village, who has its own committee, the pool committee, is currently undergoing a modernization study. So they engaged with an architect, and it's a multi-phase approach in the recommendations. And they are also wrestling with the recommendations that came back from that design expert, from those design experts, and are currently trying to understand where the appetite lies on any of the recommendations that are being made, and what is possible per any future iteration of the CIP, whether that's a 2026 CIP, 2027 CIP, and what the board's appetite is for spending dollars and what we get for those dollars. So I'm creating awareness for you all in case it comes up in conversations with residents. What's going on? Yes, the pool is not under our purview, but this is just an FYI. This is what's happening. This is a well thought after amenity for the village. As I've said too at many board levels or many board meetings as well, it is one of the amenities in the village that actually has a cash positive revenue flow for the village, so that it doesn't, at worst, it doesn't, it does more than break even. So let's put it that way. So that's what's going on there. Questions, comments? Okay. Let's go to housekeeping items. Member recruitment. So I'm sorry, not Ty Cash. And Peter Wickman's last meeting was in July. And as far as I know, I haven't talked with John lately about this, but I don't know that anyone has shown any interest. Certainly nobody has been appointed by the village president to be in Peter Wickman's stead and to take his place. But if you can think of anyone that would be a good fit and a member of this committee, by all means, please reach out to them, encourage them to fill out the informational packet at Village Hall. And David Sykes, I don't even know, is it available on the website? Hey, I'm interested in volunteering. Can you help me out on this one?
It is. I believe it's on the committee's page of the website. Let me go look quick to make sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a committee volunteer application form on the basic committees page. If you
Okay,
look under the government and then click on the committees,
great.
it'll be there.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So encourage folks that you think that show interest. And it's not just this committee. I mean, any committee, any participation in village business would be great. And the way you go about it, as David just explained, is fill out the form, show your interest. I know that Village Hall keeps track on a running list of folks that are interested in the different committees. And, ultimately we want to be a full committee and not just 6 persons strong, but 7 persons strong. And reach out to your network, please. That's that.
Hey, Mark, can I make a
please.
suggestion that maybe
Please.
for the monthly village notes that comes out, that there's just a mention in there going out to residences as we get towards the end of the year as a reminder, hey, committees are always looking for new residents, not just ours, but I haven't seen anything published for a while, and we've got a lot of new people in the village. It could be a good way to generate new names.
Yeah. David Sykes, do you have any thoughts about that? I know you have a lot to do with creating the village bulletin.
Yeah, we do run something for that every once in a while. Usually when there's 2 or 3 committees that are looking for people, we'll put something in the bulletin. All the new residents actually in their new information packets get a community interest form, and they can fill it out and send it back to us. That's generally where we've gotten the most recent people to fill committees from. But yeah, they can send it back and just shows what they're interested in. And if something comes up, someone will contact them about it and go that way. But yeah, it's probably about time to send another article, put another article out there about the committee openings.
Yeah, especially after the town halls that we've been having lately with lots of participation. Let's get some of those people that are participating in committees.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, good deal. Thank you, Kat. All right. Well, unless anybody has any more comments about member recruitment, I'm going to move on to more of the fun and at the same time sad part of today's business. But I guess, David Sykes, I want to say thank you on behalf of the committee for all of your years of service. And if you weren't online at the beginning of this meeting, and I know this too, David Sykes is retiring. After all, he spent a lot of time in the village, so he will be surely missed. But I believe, David, I heard you say that Thursday, 9/18 is your last day on the job. So I want to say thank you from me on behalf of the committee for everything that you've done, and certainly the wealth of knowledge and professionalism that you've brought to this village. You'll be surely missed. And I don't know. I know you've always said this, that life will move on without you, and yes, it will. But that doesn't mean that we won't miss you. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done. And, we'll have to find somebody else to take our notes and put together these meeting minutes. But I wanted to give people an opportunity to extend their thank yous if they so care to David. And you're just a special person. So thank you. Don't all go at once. Speak at will. Please, go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah,
Oh,
go, Ty.
Cynthia, go.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Okay.
Please.
Well, I mean, as I said, before, it's really kind of bittersweet. David is someone else who grew up in the village, and he's just really been a part of everything, and so important here. So important. I mean, I have trouble imagining what the village would be like without his gentle touch and support for everybody across the board. And I know when I came back to the village in 2003, he was really important then, and continues to be. And David, I can just say congrats. You've worked hard for a long time, and we're really going to miss you. Really going to miss you. So I hope we still see you around.
Hi, go. Thank you, Cynthia.
David, so until I read the recent bulletin announcing your retirement, I had no idea that you'd had the sheer number of years of service for the village or had been in the village this long. So I was really glad that kind of history was communicated and set straight. So anyway, I was blown away. Um, but I wanted to thank you for your years of service. You're kind of one of the key reasons why the village runs like it does, and kind of keeping that institutional knowledge is kind of what makes the village a special place. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ty.
David, I also just wanted to say thank you. Every time we've interacted, you've been incredibly helpful and very friendly. You seem to always have the answers, and so I appreciate your help over the years. Wish you the best of luck.
You're here. All right, Kat, I see you
Yes,
unmuted, and then
I
we'll
need to say
Andy
something,
Curtis.
'cause all I can say is, David, you are leaving big shoes to fill. You have done just such an excellent job of customer service, just literally for 20 plus years. You know how to really work with people who've been here for a long time and then don't want change, but also move towards change. So I thank you for that. And I just think about when I moved here, there was no village website, and that was all because of you. Thank you.
You're here. Yep. All right, Andy
Yeah.
Curtis, your last
Well,
one.
enjoy your retirement, David. Your institutional knowledge is going to be missed. Having someone that knows everything is invaluable. But enjoy retirement.
I appreciate all the kind words. That's really moving. And I'm not going anywhere. So I keep telling the coworkers in the office that I'm not going to disappear. Just a phone call away if they need anything. And I expect to be back here in like the next couple weeks saying, oh yeah, I can help you with that. I can help you with that. And things that come up next May or next January when the marina stuff comes up, and I have to help them out with that kind of stuff, and more than willing to do all that. So, but yeah, it's the village has been my whole life. I grew up here, went through all the different recreation programs that are out there and all that kind of stuff. And almost all my entire work history is all working for the village. So great place to be, great people in the village. So, and the rec committee is one of my favorite ones because you guys get down to business, don't waste time, and get us out of here on a reasonable time. So I'll stop right now.
Good deal, David Sykes.
Thanks all.
Yeah, thank you. I won't say anything else, but this is great. So yeah, let's keep moving on and honor what David Sykes had just said, and that's to keep things timely and everybody home and out of here on time. All right, so David Sykes, thank you. Future agenda items. I'm not sure if folks have anything that wants to be put on a future agenda item. I'm going to take the corp recommendations and follow up off for our next meeting. This does not seem to gain any traction at any level, but as I mentioned before, if there are items to talk about, give me a call, send me an email. I have to publish the agenda the end of the week before we meet. So in this instance, typically David Sykes wanted to see it on Thursday. This time around, I got it to him Friday morning, so I apologize, David. But
Quite all right, we got it done.
We got it done thanks to you. But so that's that. Future meetings. Just want to keep this on everybody's radar. We are scheduled to meet in November. It'd be Monday, November 10th. And then the next meeting isn't until January 12th. So that'll keep in line with our 2-month cadence. And then I guess just looking a little bit further afield, we'll meet in January, then we'll meet in March, May, July, September, and so on and so forth. So we'll keep that same bi-monthly meeting cadence like we had in the last few years. All right. So lock down your calendars. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I don't have anything else to talk about. We could sit here, stare at each other in silence, or I could entertain a motion to adjourn. You guys don't want to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Great. Motion to adjourn by Joel Fields. Is there a second? Andy Curtis.
I will
see you.
second that motion
Great.
to adjourn.
All right. Well, I'm going to assume unanimous consent unless somebody raises their hand. Seeing none, we're adjourned. Happy Monday. We'll see you guys around the village.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night,
everyone.
everybody.